So if you're an individual that's been training naturally for quite some time, then you've probably experienced hitting a plateau, not making progress, being too fatigued, feeling pain in your joints and your ligaments, feeling like you're going backwards with your training. Well, if that's you, then I promise a lot of natural lifters go through this. I went through this myself. I've been training naturally for about 10 years now, and I've coached hundreds of individuals so far. And this is such a common problem that I hear. So in this video, I actually want to break down, after my 10 years of experience and coaching for a few years, coaching a few hundred people, the easiest blueprint to follow to make progress as a natural lifter without hitting road bumps all the time and feeling like there's steady progress always available, okay? So I'm gonna break it down. I have 4 things that I want to talk about. This video is not gonna be fancy. It's not gonna have a lot of cuts. It's not gonna have a lot of edits. It's gonna be just raw information. And if you are, looking to learn, this is gonna be a video for you. If you want like a fancy dopamine filled video, probably click off and find something else. But if you're willing to learn and understand things to a much deeper degree, then this video is going to be for you. Now, I was just on the RMV for a whole hour before this, so I'm a little agitated. You know, if you've ever had to deal with the RMV, how annoying that may be. So I'm going to try not to allow that to get into this video and in my ability to explain this. But the first thing that I see the most as a coach, as somebody that has been doing this for a very long time, is that people are training too hard. Okay, so when I say that, you're probably like, what do you mean training too hard? Like, you're supposed to train hard. And that is true, you gotta train very hard, but training too hard is what causes a lot of the issues when it comes to stalling your progress as a natural. When your body is developing, because you're lifting, 2 things matter: how much tissue you can build and how your CNS reacts to training and how capable your CNS is when you go and train, okay? If I go to the gym and I'm constantly pushing myself to my absolute max, what does that do to my body? My CNS gets fried. My central nervous system, which is very responsible for my ability to exert, right, power and strength as I'm lifting, is absolutely fried. And when your CNS is fried, you're not going to feel strong. You're not going to have the same amount of output possible when you're going through certain movements. And most people don't understand that if you don't deload correctly, if you don't train with a proper progression, and you don't allow your body to catch up, guess what? Before you know it, you have injuries, you have strains, it has to put you out of the gym for some time. It limits you from doing certain movements. And if you train properly, right, because, as a high-level power lifter that's been able to squat 700 pounds, deadlift 800 pounds, bench over 400 pounds, that has been able to build a lot of tissue, the biggest shock that I had when I went from whatever I was doing in the past to the last couple of years where I started working with coaches, and especially more recent with the coach that I currently work now for the past 2 years, was when I first switched over, I was like, wait, it almost feels like half the time I'm training, like I'm not actually exerting anything close to my top end, right? There's always reps left in the tank. And once you understand that you need those type of weeks, so it can set you up for weeks where you are pushing yourself to a lot higher intensity, then you understand that that's the only way you can stay healthy as a natural lifter. Remember, if you're not a natural lifter, you can take substances that help your recovery, okay? If recovery is not an issue, then you can always train a little harder and make more progress. But as natural lifters, we have to worry about recovery, and we're gonna get to recovery in a second. But how do we fix this issue of training too hard, going into the gym and just exerting way too much energy, training way too close to our top end ability, right? Just pushing ourselves to absolute max all the time, and just destroying our CNS, just frying our CNS on a daily and weekly basis. There's a few things that matter. The first one's gonna be understanding like blocks and block periodization, okay? Those 2 things you gotta understand. In a training block, I like to either have 3, 4, or 5 week training blocks with my clients. For myself personally, I perform best when I have 4 week training blocks. In those training blocks, they're gonna usually have 4 or 5 days a week that you're training. You're gonna have to have rest days. Without rest days, once again, you're not giving your body a chance to recover, right? As a natural lifter, you need the time to recover. We're gonna get to recovery in a second. But within the week, you're training 4 or 5 days a week. You need to structure training where you have a chance to progress certain lifts, certain accessories. So within a block, you're always gonna figure out what your fundamental lifts are or things that you can progress. Maybe they're not compounds, maybe they're not the squat, bench, and deadlift like I do for myself or for my powerlifting clients. But maybe it's your dumbbell press, maybe it's your hack squat, right? Maybe it's your leg press, whatever you're progressing. But you need to have things that you can progress within the block, right? From week 1 to week 4, or week 1 to week 3, whatever way you structure your week. And you need to have 1 week out of that block, either early on, it's like ends up becoming that deload week because it's much easier, and then it gets more progressively harder into week 4 or week 5, where you're pushing yourself to your, highest intensity. And then you need to understand block periodization or phases of blocks, right? So every couple of phases, you need to start down, you got to start again and build through blocks as well. And I know that maybe sounds like a word jumble, but I did a little illustration here where you kind of see like these blocks, right? So early on in your phase, it might be a 4-block phase, you're building a foundation of like your baseline strength. So I'm gonna use a squat for an example, right? So let's say I am training an athlete and he wants to have the strongest squat possible. Well, for the first block, we might run a top set of four reps, right? So a set of 4 reps, and then there'll be working sets. He'll have a secondary squat day. But throughout that block, right? So there's a 4-week block. By the end of that first block, we're gonna test his best set of 4, okay? Now, the following block, we might go to a set of 3 for the top set. The following block after that, we might go to a set of 2, and then the last block in that phase might be a set of 1, right? So we're gonna give ourselves a chance to test his top end strength, right, by block periodization until we can figure out what his top end strength, and through that process, he's going to get stronger because he's avoiding training and figuring out what his top end single is and building more and more strength with more reps, and eventually that volume is decreasing but the intensity is increased, okay? So that's a basic understanding of kind of blocks, phases, block periodizations, and why progression like that matters as a natural lifter. Because our body, our CNS can only handle so much work. So this is a great way for you to train your CNS to do more, right? Be able to take on more weight, and through that process, your muscle density and the amount of tissue you can build increases, okay? So once you end up finishing or you do the last block in your phase, once again, you have a chance to have a new phase, okay? And that may be something that you're focused within that next phase. It may be that you're running that again because it worked so well. Maybe you're trying something differently. But this right here, right, this type of training as a natural is fundamental to progress if you're a natural lifter. You have to train this way. Now, within your weeks, within your programming, you need to have hypertrophy and you need to have movements that are focused on building more strength. You need to do both as a natural lifter. When you see videos of bodybuilders that are just doing a ton of hypertrophy and they're only focused on hypertrophy, and they're making a ton of, they're massive, they have a ton of tissue built. I mean, they're on a lot of substances that are able to help them recover and build new tissue, right? Like growth hormone. Now, as a natural lifter, if you don't progress your strength, your ability to push more and demand more tissue growth is that matters a lot more because we're not using substances like growth hormone to demand the tissue growth in an unnatural way. Okay, so now that was a lot, but most people, they're going into the gym mindlessly doing whatever they are doing. They're doing whatever workout they feel like doing that day. They're pushing themselves, and the thing is if you don't train at all, if you don't lift at all, that's a great way to start. That's a perfect place to start, right? You're not doing anything. So when you go to the gym and you do that for a year or two, you're gonna look significantly better. You're gonna build tissue. But long term, that's not going to be enough, okay? And I hope that makes sense. Now, I could make a whole video on just that. I can make 5 videos on just that, okay? That's just the baseline understanding. Let's move on to recovery, right? So this kind of ties in as well. If you don't recover correctly as a natural lifter, once again, you will not see progress. And I break it down into your sleep, nutrition, and your hydration, just to keep it simple. Obviously, you want to sleep around 6 to 8 hours of sleep a day. When you're training in the gym, or you're just training in general, in whatever sport you're training in, you only recover when you're sleeping. It's not your ice bath, it's not your sauna, it's not your massage gun. That doesn't actually recover you. When you're sleeping, that tissue is being healed, okay, that you're actively ripping apart when you're doing these exercises. And your CNS is also going to need you to sleep so it can recover as well, so you don't feel fried. Okay, a gallon of water a day is a pretty good rule of thumb. And when it comes to your supplements, I think people complicate this because they're like, oh, take this X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. Your food, your nutrition, your sleep, and the way you train is literally 98% of what's going to determine how good your progress is. The other 2% might be creatine, it might be your fish oil, it might be your magnesium and zinc, it might be your daily multivitamin. Those things are great. But if you can't get the other things down correctly first, then don't even bother trying to have a supplement stack that is like ideal. Like, you're focused on the wrong thing, okay? This is like 98% of what's going to determine if you make progress as a natural lifter. And this is, the other couple percent on top. If you get all this thing down correctly, go ahead, add the supplements in there as well, okay? Now, you need to understand, what is my goal as a lifter? If I am a very skinny individual and I'm a hard gainer and my goal is to put on as much size as possible, then obviously my goal is to be in a caloric surplus, okay? You want to eat more than your body actually needs to stay at maintenance, so I can see more weight being added on, okay? As more weight is being added on, if you combine that with proper training, then you will stimulate muscle growth. If you are overweight and you're trying to lose weight, it's the opposite. You want to be in a deficit, okay? It's pretty basic stuff. If you are interested in what your maintenance amount is for your body, for your age, for how active you are throughout the day, there's a million websites where you can go in, plug in that data, and it'll tell you your maintenance amount. But yeah, that's the rule of thumb. Now, when it comes to a natural lifter, you have to be in a surplus to build more tissue. Of course, if you're extremely overweight, or just overweight in general, the first goal you should have is to recomposition your body, lose as much weight as you possibly can, the excess fat that you don't want to have, and then after you do a great job of that, okay, then you can shift into having a nice little bit of a surplus with proper training to stimulate as much tissue growth as possible, okay? And what the general rule of thumb that I like to recommend is about 1 gram of protein per body weight. If you aim for that in your daily intake, you will have enough protein and then macronutrients to build a lot of tissue, okay? So keep that very simple, but I guess if I could add one more thing to that is, like, of course, if you add cardio throughout your day versus taking it out, that's going to determine how many calories you're burning that day. Now, moving on to point 3 here, it's going to be fundamentals. The reason why I put a whole point for fundamentals, and there's not much written about it, I'll explain to you what I mean by fundamentals, is that your fundamentals in lifting matter a lot, right? So your technique, your form when you're actually doing the movements, your genetics and leverages, all those things, if you don't understand them, then you're going to be disappointed in what you're seeing for your progress. For example, if you don't have good technique in your squat, bench, and deadlift, you're probably going to injure yourself, okay? So I can make full-on videos about proper tech there and how I would go about training those things. But ultimately, if you're doing certain movements that require good technique and you're not using good technique, you're going to hurt yourself at some point, okay? Understanding your genetics is also very important. If you're comparing your body shape and style to somebody that has completely different genetics than you, and you're upset that their routine is not working for you, or if your hard work is not getting the same results as where they are, then, obviously you're shooting yourself in the foot. For example, there's people out there that have longer torsos, okay? I am one of them. So naturally, and if I combine that as well with my fat storage, well, I have like a pretty lean torso and a pretty lean midsection on my body. So you can see my abs pretty much when I'm like 220 pounds and 245 pounds, right? And somebody may look at that and say, hey, Van, how do you bulk and you're still able to see your abs? Now, of course, I bulk an amount that doesn't just bloat me and make me super fat. but I have great genetics as well. And when I compare my actual genetics to the way my body is, then of course that's what happens. But if somebody that's like 5'7", with a shorter torso and more just like and holds more fat in their stomach area, if they go on a bulking regimen that isn't ideal, then they're going to see a lot of weight being gained in their midsection here. So of course, if you understand your genetics, then you're going to have more realistic expectations of what happens when you do put some time into your lifting and obviously into your body. The other thing is going to be leverages. So obviously as a powerlifting coach, as a high-level power lifter, as somebody that's coached a lot of individuals with just bodybuilding as well, if you don't understand that there are leverages correlated to how well you'll perform certain lifts, then you'll also be disappointed in why certain lifts are progressing faster than others. For example, I don't have the best leverages to bench press. So for me, when I deadlifted 650 pounds, I could barely bench 300, okay? But that being said, in the past 2 years now, year and a half now, I still took my bench from low 3s to low 4s. I was still able to add about 100 pounds to my bench press because I still had proper training, proper recovery, and used my leverages to the best of their ability to get myself in a position to press more, okay? But those things do matter, and a lot of people look past that, and we're very quick to look at physique that looks good on social media and be like, dang, I'm gonna look like this guy or that guy, right? So you don't wanna do that. And this actually just ties into the next point, which is realistic goals and expectations. Once again, when you set yourself on this journey of bettering yourself, of making as much progress as you possibly can as a natural lifter, you cannot look at somebody that's on gear and give yourself that same expectation as a lifter, okay? That's going to be very difficult to do. It's going to be a challenge to get to that type of shape unless, there's a lot of people on gear actually that don't look very good. So that might happen as well. But you have to look at the people that are natural, that have similar genetics and capabilities to say, you know what, that is naturally achievable. I am a genetic, anomaly in the sense that I have great genetics, okay? But that being said, the earliest version of me 10 years ago when they first started lifting, I was 55 pounds, very lean, very skinny, and then now I'm, 240 pounds, super strong, a ton of tissue. Obviously, it took me a lot of years, and most of that progress was done in the last few years. But, when you look at that data and say, you know what, this person's been lifting for a very long time, they have great genetics, and you're like, if I devote myself to this for a long period of time, I can also be there someday. But if I were to be somebody that looks at me and says, ooh, I want to be there in 6 months, 12 months, that's an unrealistic goal. That's an unrealistic expectation. The last point that I want to make in this video that I think is so important is you have to expand your horizon on your time frame, okay? If you cannot find a way to make this your lifestyle and a way of living, then you're going to quickly realize that the progress you make is going to end up you're going to be very demoralized when life gets in the way or you can't train for a little bit of time and you digress from all that progress, okay? So you're always trying to figure out, okay, what can I do and how can I implement training into my life, but something that I can maintain forever. Okay, there's a lot of benefits to training, of course, and everybody knows that, but a lot of people just struggle with doing something that they can do for years to come and hopefully for the rest of their life. So if you found this video helpful and you've learned something today, drop a like, drop a comment on something that you may want to see, and if you're interested in working with me directly to get you to your goals, book a call with me in the link down below. I'd love to have a conversation and help you get into the best shape of your life. That being said, guys, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.